Many fans here in this shit.
Hello and welcome back to MDG Media. Today we're looking at final round coverage from the last Euro Tour event of the season. It is the Andalucia Open, played in one of the more aesthetically pleasing courses that we play. Played of course in beautiful Chipiona, Spain. We have a strong set of players here. Silva Saarinen, she has been playing very well throughout the first two rounds, especially in round 2, shot an incredible 6 under round. And next up, Jenni Karppinen also has been playing very well. Not quite as well as Silva, you know, Jenni was kind of overshadowed in round 2. She also shot a very solid 2 under, which is good. And Birgit Vider, an Estonian player, strong both on the backhand and forehand side, really likes those hyzer sort of releases. Quite a ways back of second place and Jenni. And then the local, Aida Braga, representing Spain as the only Spanish player in the field. She's holding it together pretty well, even though she's a little bit back of the pace. And as you can see, very small field, only these 4 players. I believe most of the players had already started their off-season at this point. And in the final round, due to some tough weather conditions, we're actually having a shotgun start. So each and every group in every division, we have players from Masters, from MPO and from FPO playing the course at the same time. And our card will start on hole 5. So hole 5, you have seen it before. 109 meters, just that OB road on the right side. Wanna fade over the road and back to the left. This is kind of hanging over the road a little bit too much, but just barely makes it back. And Silva is gonna be in the circle looking at a birdie. That's really the kind of ideal start you would like to have here. As Jenni also with a really solid shot on the edge of the circle as well. And looks like the wind is not too tough yet. The reason for why we're playing the shotgun start is mostly the wind. We're gonna have really high winds in the afternoon. So this round is actually played, if I remember correctly, at 9 a.m. So a much earlier start than, you know, sometimes we might see from the lead card, as Aida throws a pretty good shot there just outside the circle. We saw Birgit playing it a little bit shorter on this one. That's what she has been doing. A player with not quite as much distance as the other 3 on the card. And what a start this would be. Not quite the case though. Aida, that almost looked like she was just playing under the basket. She has had some putting struggles in the past. And talking about putting struggles, none of that for Jenni on this first hole, as she makes a good one from 9 meters out. And already putting some pressure on Silva. Really, it's gonna be a battle between these 2 Finns for the win of this tournament. And Silva feeling no pressure there. She has also been putting very well, extremely well in round 2. I believe she only had that one miss on hole 17 in round 2. Other than that, she was putting pretty much perfect, even making a couple outside the circle. So pretty strong start from our players. And we're moving on to the island hole, hole 6. placed on this huge island, only 80 meters of distance. You do have the water risk on both right and left, and if you go too far past, also might find yourself a little bit moist. Really, the routes on this one come in different shapes. You have the hyzer, you have the straight, you have the anhyzer. You can even go over the woods if you like. Most of our players have been going for this straight route. And Silva just throwing it perfectly down the middle. She's gonna be a little bit short there. Gonna have to make another one of those circles edge putts. But that's some pressure on Jenni, who has kind of pulled it a little bit to the right, and that's a big problem. She's not gonna be in danger of taking a bogey, but at least not immediately. But the approach from there is not exactly as easy as you would like on this one. Same thing for Birgit too. That's a pretty tough result here. It's really one of the easiest holes on the course. And Aida will be kind of in that middle ground. Judging by the last hole, I would be very surprised if she was running that putt, as on the last one, landed a bit short and looked like a layup. And you can see the conditions still pretty calm. I believe the wind is going to pick up in about a few holes. That's a good approach from Jenni. I believe in MPO we played about a third of the round with virtually no wind. About a third, or I think we played about 5 or 6 holes with no wind, as Silva makes another good putt there, perfectly on the pole. She's looking dialed, just like yesterday. Really, I feel like that was what made her round in round 2 look so effortless, was that while she was making almost all the putts looked very effortless. It wasn't like she was just barely making them. They were all very much in the middle. All right, hole 7. We're throwing out of the island and into the mainland. There's a couple different routes here. We have even seen the layup play from Birgit on this one, but most players either going for the Anheuser route, kind of towards the left side of the fairway and then trying to turn to the basket, or you can also go for that tighter hyzer route on the right side, which this is exactly what Silva is trying to do. Looks like she turned it over a little bit though. For some reason, I don't know what the reason is, but seems like a lot of our players who are going for that tighter hyzer gap do actually turn it over almost every time. And just like this, Jenni also has turned it over way too much. Even so much that she has ended up in the water, and that's going to be almost a guaranteed stroke for Silva. And as I mentioned, Birgit not interested in going over the water on the first, so she's just laying up. And Aida, unfortunately, for I believe the second round in a row, has ended up in the water. I guess looking at the 2 water shots we had, Birgit's safe play does kind of make sense, although she has not gotten up and down very well yet. And whoa, that was a late release on the forehand for Jenni. Sure, she's not happy with that, as she still has a 10-meter putt left, even to get a bogey. So looking like about a 50-50 chance for Silva to even get 2 strokes. We do see some shakiness on the approach here. Silva, of course, putting it under the basket, but everybody else not really getting, into or near that bullseye circle. And as I've mentioned earlier, as Jenni misses it, unfortunately, a lot of these kind of small mistakes, they can be some sort of a distraction. There can be some sort of a change in the player's routine. Sometimes, for example, this round is played pretty early. I'm not sure whether these players are used to that. But really, usually it's just a lack of focus in the moment. I feel like that's the hardest thing about playing disc golf, is that you have to be constantly focused when you're throwing, but you don't have the mental energy to focus for the entirety of the round. Or if you do, then you're some sort of a superhuman. So while we see 2 double bogeys, 1 bogey and 1 par, it's likely that is just a small lapse in focus, and we're gonna see better scores in the future as we're moving on to a hole that is very difficult to birdie. I believe almost impossible to birdie, at least if you want to birdie it from inside the circle. You have this initial gap with the Mando tree on the right. Then you're, for the perfect shot, if you want to end up in the circle, you have to fly under the low ceiling so far forward, and at the very end even get a little bit to the right. So really most of our players are just trying to hit the gap, fly forward, get some good distance off the tee, and hopefully have an easy approach. As Silva throws kind of the perfect shot. I can't really imagine a better one there. She's gonna be just about 15 meters away. I believe that to be the best drive that we have seen so far throughout 3 rounds. As Birgit's kind of getting a wobbly release on that forehand. Not the prettiest of flights. She's gonna end up in that bush. Hopefully still a chance to get a par. And Jenni, that's kind of the normal play. Not quite going as aggressive as Silva, trying to get there in the circle too, but rather just get through the gap and into the open. And Aida there kind of missing the gap, but still getting well down there. She's gonna have a good chance at par. Let's see if Birgit can get some good power on this forehand, and oh no. A really unfortunate pole hit there. I'm actually not quite sure what that pole is doing. Might be some sort of a landmark, as we have another hit. How is that even possible? Hopefully not a third one here. And luckily not there, but wow, that's... I wonder what the chances for that are, hitting the same, 20 centimeter wide pole twice on the same card, and another pole. What is going on with the poles on this hole? I wonder if they're aiming at the poles. Probably not, but you can see everybody kind of leaving their approaches a little bit short, as it is only about 4 meters behind the basket where the OB path will start. And even Silva, she's known to be a very aggressive putter usually, even from far distance, just opting to lay up under the basket. And a tough putt. This is also a very tough putt, looking directly at the OB. And you can see a little bit of hesitant movement there. Not quite getting that arm up. And it looks like Silva will be getting even more strokes on the card. And this is when the rain will start. So looking at the forecast, we were looking at the forecast before the round during the previous day, and it was looking pretty dark. It was looking extremely windy, extremely heavy rain. So that's what you're gonna be seeing for the next couple of holes. And especially at the start of this rain, must have been one of the hardest rains that we had all season. But moving on to hole 9. This will not be the last hole of our front 9 as we started on hole 5. So our last hole of the front 9 will be, I believe, hole 13. But this one, a really tight wooded hole. You have to get under these woods, under these trees. And Silva actually doing that very well. It's one of the better drives we have seen on this one so far. It's quite rare to see somebody get all the way down there. With that low ceiling and the distance of 109 meters, it's really difficult to get into circle 1. And you can see the water coming down. I feel like, kind of like I mentioned in one of the previous rounds, if you can see the wind and the effects on the wind on coverage, that means it's truly windy. But if you can see the rain on coverage, that means that it's actually raining very hard. And possibly contributing to some of these shots. You can see both Aida and Jenni kind of holding on to the disc for a long time, while Birgit throws a good shot. This is really the part of the round where if you can get any sort of pars, sometimes even bogeys can be okay, but especially if you can just score as many pars as possible, you know that you're not going to be losing a lot of strokes. And Jenni there, she's going to have a putt at the par. And Aida unfortunately leaving it way short. She's still gonna have to approach for a double bogey, as everybody else on the card has much better position. Birgit there, good chance for the par, and Aida just pitching up in the wind and the rain. It's not really smart to leave a lot of long putts. But let's see if Silva actually wants to run at this. Yeah, not really. Interesting thing about this sort of a rainstorm was that the wind was very gusty. It wasn't that the wind was constantly blowing hard. It was most of the time blowing very hard, but it was quite random. You know, sometimes the direction of the wind changed, sometimes the stiffness of the wind changed. So Jenni looks like she's gonna lose another stroke to Silva, and after this hole, the difference between the two top competitors is going to be 10 strokes. Excuse me, it's going to be 9 strokes, which is less than 10, but 9 strokes with 13 holes remaining is quite a lot. Luckily for Jenni, a lot of these holes are very difficult and do offer a lot of opportunity for even multiple stroke differences. For example, hole 10 here, especially in these conditions, a dogleg par 4 with both the Mando at the corner and a lot of OB all around the fairway. Off the tee, the most likely OB you're gonna find is that left side. A lot of people fading out to the left side OB, and when you turn the corner towards the basket, you have those fences on the right side lining the right side OB, and also you have the path on the left. So important to keep it straight here. And this one is looking... I was about to say it's looking pretty bad on that right side, but getting a good tree kick, I believe. And Silva still very much in position for at least a par. Similar thing for Birgit there. She's gonna be on the fairway. Really, it's a pretty difficult shot if you want to get all the way to the corner. And you can see these players are facing, I believe, a pretty strong headwind. So even that drive, while it normally might not be what Jenni is looking for, I'm sure she's completely happy with it right now. And this one needs to fade back to stay inbounds. And I'm actually not sure whether that right side is considered OB or not. But as we didn't see an OB graphic, I must believe that it is safe there. And that's Birgit playing to the corner. Silva trying to do the same. Looks like she has. And Aida clearly not being OB here, so that's a good sign. She still has a chance for the par, although that one is a little bit short of the corner. On this dogleg par 4, and really any sort of dogleg hole in disc golf, it's extremely difficult if you're short of the corner. You never really have that same sort of space. Don't really have a comfortable shot to get around. And Jenni, good forehand there. Birgit trying to get to the basket, but catching one of the last trees on that right side. Luckily she's not OB, but once again making it a little bit more difficult than she would like. And this one is heading towards the left side. OB needs to slow down. And it has, on top of the curb, as we have mentioned earlier. Or as I have mentioned earlier, if you're on top of the curb on this course, that means that every time you are safe. A little bit different from a lot of the courses we play. Usually if you're on top of the OB line, that means that you're going to be OB. Different for this course though. Good approaches for both Silva and Jenni. They're gonna have short putts left to get, I believe, to get pars, which would be a great score on this hole in these conditions. And yeah, it seems like Aida was definitely safe, just touching the curb. So well inbounds, taking her meter with no penalty. And you can see the palm trees on the background moving in the wind. While Birgit makes a great putt, that's very well done. Silva as well. I feel like Birgit is kind of in a funny position in the tournament where she's not very likely to be losing her third position, but she's extremely unlikely to manage to overthrow Jenni for the second position in the tournament. So really, everything Birgit just has to do is to play her own game and just don't take any of the huge numbers that are very much possible in these conditions and on this course. We have seen it even in the better conditions in rounds 1 or 2. But hole 11 here. A pretty long par 4, probably playing much longer than that 178 meters. Off the tee, you're trying to get as much distance as possible while still staying between the OB lines. There's a lot of these small bushy trees that you have to avoid on the fairway. And then on the approach, you know, it's one of the tightest greens you're gonna see on the course. Really difficult, and even from where Silva is, that is pretty much the perfect drive. She's not gonna have an easy shot through the green. So for example, oh no, as Jenni has gone OB. I was about to say from where Jenni is landing, there's no way she's going to the green. And Birgit there, same thing. She's gonna have to throw another pretty much full power shot to get to the edge of the inbounds area, which is the sweet spot, of course. And Aida there barely avoiding the right side OB that Jenni threw into. We're gonna have a lot of layups here. Silva really the only player in position to go for the green if she will like to. But I doubt that she still feels too comfortable going for it. And even from there, where Birgit landed, it's not gonna be a lot of, it's not gonna be a lot of opportunity to get to the green compared to where Jenni threw more on that left side. That's much easier, much more manageable. Same thing for Aida there. And it looks like Silva is actually going for the green. Very aggressive shot. There's a lot of OB on this green. Both right, left and long. And we didn't see an OB graphic. It's kind of hard to understand where the OB is, even though I have played the course, but it has been some time since this coverage has been filmed. I apologize for the late publishment of this video. We had some issues in the production, but nothing we can't fix, and we will fix the issues for next year. Back to action. We saw some errant approaches there, and Jenni hopefully throwing a better one. Looks like she has a very good shot there. She's gonna have an inside circle look for the bogey after the initial drive went OB. That looks like another bogey. And Aida will actually have to throw again. That's quite brutal actually. This time luckily staying safe. And Silva as well. Having stayed safe, she's just gonna throw it under the basket, and that should be a pretty simple, I believe a par for her. So very good play so far. You can just see the wind throwing these discs around. And just look at the Euro Tour flags. So hard to throw in this wind. Especially on this sort of a course where you have to be quite precise with your landing. There's not a lot of space around any of the baskets. As we see Jenni there struggling with the wind. And Birgit with another good putt. Great to see. I feel like putting in this sort of wind is the most difficult thing, because when you're throwing, when you're driving, when you're approaching, you can always just take a super overstable disc, throw it flat, and hopefully don't let the wind get on top of it too much, as Jenni has missed another one. You can see she's getting a little bit frustrated right now, and for good reason. Those are not the sort of putts that you see her missing normally. But as Jenni took a 7, we see Aida taking even a bigger number, a 9. Almost pushing double digits on a single hole. And we're moving on to the windiest holes on the course. Gradually, of course. Still about 4 holes till we get to the absolute windiest part. But hole 12 is windy enough already. We're gonna play a par 4. You have to throw left of the river on your first shot. There is a Mando to force you doing that. This hole is playing a par 4. And not the par 3 that is marked there on the sign. Yeah, really just put all your focus into this first shot, and then after that, hopefully have a chance to get to the basket. But more realistically, in this wind, after your good drive around the Mando tree, you're gonna be very much fine with just getting over the river on the second, get in bounds on your second shot, and then pitch up and take your par. And par 4, of course. As we see kind of regular drives from everybody. Birgit actually hitting the Mando tree, which is of course not ideal, and she's gonna have much more distance left than she would like. That's not really a huge problem. And Aida with a pretty good kick actually off the wall. That's a tactic that we see some players using, deliberately throwing at the wall. Birgit here. Very nice forehand, making some good progress down the fairway. She chose to take that left side of the river, which is... I feel like it's kind of rare for the second shot. But there's so much space on this right side. For example, just where Jenni threw, she had another 5-10 meters even to the right towards that OB path to miss. And same thing for Aida. Well done there. And I'm interested to see whether Silva is actually going for this birdie or not, even in this wind. Kind of facing a headwind here, and this is not looking great. This needs to sit, and I feel like it has. Risking the water on the left side, but she still should have a relatively easy chance to get up and down for the par. As really is everybody on the card. Birgit there, good approach. Silva just pitching it under the basket and... Yep, no sense running these putts. You can see the red and white, you know, stripe in the background just flopping in the wind. It was so difficult to play during this round. And even these sort of putts are not given. Definitely not given. If you don't put proper spin or proper angle on your disc, your disc can easily lift up in the wind or drop down. Luckily for our players, they're having no trouble with this. And we had a par frame. It's a pretty good job on this. You know, in the calm I would call this a pretty easy hole. But in this wind, really no hole is going to be easy. And definitely not this one. Hole 13, 185 meters. Once again, you have the river on the right. You have the path on the left. You have to stay in between the two. You even have that mando tree 2/3 down the fairway that you have to go left of. So really off the drive, you want to land somewhere in the middle of the fairway, from where you can hopefully advance past the mando, ideally to jump putt range. We haven't seen birdies on this hole yet. And actually you see Silva throwing from behind the tee pad. That is something you can do in this tournament. Tournament director or the tournament organizers were a little bit nervous about slick tee pads. So they gave the players an opportunity to throw behind the tee pad where they wanted. I feel like that is a very responsible choice, as we haven't seen any bad slips so far. Some players, of course, opting to tee from the tee pad, like Jenni here. And she's safe. Everybody's safe so far, kind of in different parts of the fairway. But let's see Aida. This yellow disc has kind of been flipping on her. So I hope it doesn't do that now. And it does not. Great to see. That is definitely the best drive of the group. Perfectly in the middle, good distance. And now it's getting a little bit tighter on the second shot. You have to stay left of the mando, as I mentioned. But these bushes on the left side, they have some sort of magnetic gravitational force on the discs. It's so common to see those bushes being hit with the second shots. Luckily for Silva, not doing one of those. And Aida kind of just chipping down there. It's all about just getting good distance on your second shot, and then on the third get to the basket. And just as I mentioned, those bushes just pulling the discs in. That was so deep. Jenni only has an opportunity to pitch out with a forehand. Let's see if Birgit even has to go for the overhand. Not something you want to do ever on the course if you're not a deliberate overhand player. Myself, I usually like to use those for different sorts of things, but we know from experience that Birgit is not one of the overhand players. And Silva there, kind of struggling with the ceiling. I feel like she's had the same thing. She had the same thing in round 1, where she was hitting the ceiling. Round 2 she fixed it. This time once again hitting the ceiling, so maybe something she has to kind of maybe work on in the future. I don't know, low ceiling shots. As Jenni has got there well, and Aida just on the edge of the bullseye. So looks like our card is gonna get away with not too much damage. Unless, yeah, that's a surprising miss from Silva. And this one is actually not too easy as she puts it up to the band. And that's gonna be in the basket for a bogey. We're gonna see, I believe, 3 bogeys here. Yeah, and Aida with the lone par. She's gonna have the box for the next hole. Nice to see, and just, you know, showcasing that these conditions, pars are really what you're looking for. As that was our front 9. Silva Saarinen, once again, super solid play, even shooting under par in the tough conditions. That is very impressive, and she's kind of really separated herself from the field. Almost does look like a one-player show at this point. Everybody else, a lot of strokes back. But hey, Jenni can still make something happen, hopefully. If you want to see that, join me on the back 9, coming in just a second.